Right, today I'm going to be refurbishing a leather steering wheel using a kit from the leatherrepaircompany.com, no less. The kit's arrived, and what you get in there is this leather cleaner, which is to degrease and clean the steering wheel before you get started. You get this second bottle, which is a preparation, helps to remove any old sealant on the leather. Then you get the colours. This is a black. You can order it in various different colours. I've gone for black. That's the main black dye. They also send you out a couple of smaller bottles, which you can mix with your main colour to get the exact tone that you need. In my case, the steering wheel was black, so I'll just be using the black. Then to finish, you've got a couple of leather finishes. You get one bottle of gloss, one bottle of matte finish, and you can mix the two together if you want the mid sheen, which is what I want, and they do actually supply the little mixing cup with it. Unfortunately mine was broke when it arrived. You also get three little sponges for applying the various solutions. You get this little sort of Scotch-Brite pad type thing. We'll show you how to use that in a minute. And you get a couple of little cotton buds, some very fine glass paper. There's a little mixing stick in there, a bit of thread if you need to redo any thread work on the steering wheel, and a couple of cocktail sticks. Right, the stuff they don't include that you might need: masking tape for any bits that are non-leather, which the central part of my steering wheel was plastic, so I don't want to get these chemicals on there. And you might want to get yourself a few microfiber cloth just to help you with the cleaning. Obviously they also provide full instructions on how to recolour it, although they don't actually tell you on here how to use the thread, so I guess you'd have to Google that or have a look at a video online on how to redo that. Right, so we're going to go and get started in a moment. So, take two on that. Take your leather cleaner. There's a little tab there that you need to wheel round to make it work, which I hadn't realised. Give it a spray onto your little sponge as supplied. Get it all to soak in nicely, and then you give your steering wheel a thorough clean with that, just all over, front, back, around the sides, around the insides. This might take a little while, but you get the idea. You do want to make sure it's completely free of any grease, which the sort of natural oils that come off your hands from the skin. And if you don't do this properly, as they say in the decorating trade, it's all in the prep, and the same is true for this. So just make sure you've worked your cleaner really in well everywhere. Once you're happy that the steering wheel's clean, it's just time to leave all the cleaning solution to dry. You can speed that up if you wish to with a hairdryer on a low setting. I'm just going to leave this to dry naturally. Okay, so having thoroughly cleaned, degreased the wheel, the next step is to use the prepping solution. This is to help remove some of the old colour and the protective coatings that are put on there, so that you're ready for colouring. Just be warned that inside this thing there is a little plastic bung under the lid that's a bit difficult to remove, so you will probably need something like a very fine bladed screwdriver to get that out, as I found as I had a problem getting that out. The little Scotch-Brite pad that they provide, according to the instructions, you wrap that around the cloth, you saturate the cloth with the prep solution, and then just give it a very light rub all over. So that's what we're going to do now. So you seem to suggest that you can be quite generous with this stuff. So let's see what happens with that. Like I say, they do say, I think I'm going to need some more of that solution on there. I don't think there's enough soaking through yet. So I'm going to pour some directly onto the pad. And that smells like acetone. I don't know what the solution actually is, but it smells like acetone. Okay, so here we go. And again, you've got to make sure you get all over the wheel, every part that's going to be coloured. Sorry, I've got that the wrong way around. Let's try that again. You can see straight away there's colour coming off, so we'll just keep going with that. Give it a thorough rub, but like I say, don't apply pressure, just let the cleaning solution itself do what it's doing. The prep solution, sorry, I should say. This is probably the bit that's going to take quite a while to do. I'm just going to add some more of the prepping solution onto that. I've just got some on the handbrake lever, which is also leather, so I've removed that very quickly. Okay, just making sure I get it every last little piece of the steering wheel. Some of these parts of the steering wheel are actually quite difficult to get at. Right, having done that, I'm just going to take a bit of clean kitchen roll and just go around it and see if there's any more stuff coming off, and if there is, then I think we'll go again. No, that seems to be okay. Oh, I've got a couple of places where I didn't want it to go that it's got to. Okay, so you can already see where, or I can see from here, that it's gone completely matte over most of the surface that I've prepared, but there are one or two areas where you can still see the sheen from the original finish. So I'm just going to go over those and give those a rub again. And I think we're about there. I certainly can't see any areas now that have any kind of sheen to them at all, although having said that, I've got a little inspection light here which will help just to check. Yeah, there's a bit there that's needs further going over. I'm just going to have a quick look now behind the wheel itself just to check. That looks okay. There's a little bit there that I'm not quite happy with. And again around this side. Okay, I'm just going to give it another quick wipe over with the kitchen roll just to see if there's anything left coming off. No, that seems okay. So once again, once you're happy that you've prepped it thoroughly using the prepping solution, you need to leave it to dry before you start with the colour coats. Again, you can use a hairdryer on a low setting if you wish. I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it to air dry, and by the looks of it, that's not going to take very long. Right, so once you're happy that the prep solution's dried off, it's time for the first colour coat. The manufacturers of this kit, or the retailers of this kit, recommend that you give at least 3 coats. The first coat I'm about to apply now. You can just go straight on with this. Now be careful not to spill any somewhere you don't want it, because it will dye just about anything. So you get a good dollop of colour on your sponge, and for the first coat you can just wipe it on all the way around. And a little goes a surprisingly long way. And again, making sure that you're getting good even coverage all the way around. But that's all nicely coated as well. And again, just take your time with this first coat, making sure that you're covering everything evenly. And again, it's just that sponge is just starting to dry out again, so we're going to add a bit more colourant. There's enough colourant here to do probably 3 steering wheels this size. I think I'm sort of roughly there with the first colour coat, so I'm going to again use my little lamp to give it a check over, see if there's any areas I've missed, such as this one there, which hasn't, it's just not quite taken there properly. Let's have a look behind. Yep, there's an area I've missed completely there, so it's always quite handy to have one of these little lamps so you can see what you're doing exactly. And again, let's have a look at these areas that were really badly worn, and again there's a little bit there that needs a bit more of a coat, just to make sure. Yep, that's looking pretty good, I would say. So that's the first coat, which once again you need to leave to dry. And I know I've said it before, you could, if you so choose, use a hairdryer on a low heat to dry that off. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it to dry naturally. So once your first coat is fully dry, and that is, it's only taken about 5 minutes to dry out on a dry, fairly cool day, you're ready for the second coat. Now the suppliers recommend that you dab your second coat on in this sort of fashion. The idea of this is to create the grain effect, because very often what happens is it starts off, I don't know whether this video is going to be high enough definition, but you can see there are some areas of grain And there are also some areas of the steering wheel where it's worn smooth through use. So we're going to try that. I'm just going to reload the sponge. And give it a fair amount. Just let that soak into the sponge. And we go on with this sort of dabbing motion. Now there are some areas where there's still quite a lot of grain on there, so you could just wipe them over. But there are some areas which have gone quite smooth through wear and tear. Mind you, this steering wheel has seen 110,000 miles, so you know it's bound to have a bit of wear. So I'll just go over that, and where you've got excess on there, just as the sponge gets dry, you can just dab off the excess. Hopefully you can see the effect that that's having. It's not going to recreate a perfect grain by any means, but it will go some way to replicating the sort of original grain that would have been on the leather. Make sure you're getting plenty of this on. You can't put too much on, you can only put too little on. Well, I say you can't put too much on. If it's dripping onto your knees, you're putting too much on, but you know what I mean. And as I said before, some of these areas are quite difficult to get into, so you will get my head in a few of these shots, but hey, I don't make videos for a living. Now I just once again want to check that I've got a fairly even coverage going on here. So I'm going to get my little inspection light out again and have a good look around. For any areas I've missed, like just there, I've missed a bit for some reason. Right into that corner there. Didn't seem to take too well. Up there looks okay. And there looks okay. Okay, so that's coat 2. Sort of happy with that. It looks pretty good. And then you need to give that a third coat. Again, you need to let this dry before you go to the third coat. So I'll leave that there. Again, you can use a hairdryer if you want to. I'm not going to. But the third coat essentially is exactly the same as what I've just shown you. So I won't bother videoing that. We'll just skip on to the seal coat. Right, so what's the third coat, colour coat applied, and it has now dried. So the next thing we need to do is to seal the colour in, and it's to sort of seal and protect coating as a finish, which, as I said earlier, you get 2 bottles of this. One is for gloss leather, one's for matte leather, but I want something in between. I would guess you would call it a mid-sheen or whatever. So what you need to do is to mix these two together. The little measuring cup that was supplied in the kit got broken in transit, so I'm going with now this happens to be out of a, I think it was a night nurse kit or whatever. Obviously it's been thoroughly cleaned before using. So what we're going to do is mix these 50-50 in here before applying the first coat of finishing. And what that does, it just seals and protects the colour that you've put on against the UV rays and sort of day-to-day natural oils and what have you that come off your hands when you're driving. Right, so there's a little stirring stick, but before we do that bit, there's like I said earlier, there is a little bit of very fine 1200 grit glass paper that they supply with the kit, and the idea is if you get any odd little bits of dust or whatever on the steering wheel whilst you're doing your colour coats, then you can remove them with that. I've been lucky, and as far as I can see, I've got no little nibs outstanding anywhere. It all looks. But if you did have one, it's just a matter of giving it a quick rub like that to get rid of the nibs. It's not enough to take off. It's a very fine compound. So we take our now two. Oh, that was nice, it just went everywhere. Mix those together thoroughly, so we've got the gloss and the matte to make a mid-sheen, hopefully, or a sort of satin effect, I guess would be what you'd call it. And again, you take your little sponge as supplied in the kit and just that's gone all over my trousers, but there you go. That's one of the joys of filming a video. And again, to try to replicate the grain effect, you go on with the dotting, the dabbing motion that you did earlier with the colour coats, and you just make sure that that's absolutely covering everything. Unfortunately, the clocks went back last night. I didn't plan this video in advance, so I might well be running out of time before I can finish this job for tonight. May well have to come back to it tomorrow to put the next two coats on. See how it goes. So that's coat one, and again, as with all the other coats, you can, if you so choose, dry it off with a hairdryer. I'm going in particularly hard in the areas where there was a lot of wear with this stuff, because those are the areas that are most likely to wear again. Now I know where I hold the steering wheel, and it's just around this sort of corner of 3, generally speaking, is where I hold the steering wheel, so I'm making sure that that gets plenty of this stuff. Okay, so that's coat one done. Right, so after doing the first sealing coat yesterday, yeah, it's the next day now, it wasn't drying very quickly, so I decided to take a hairdryer on a low setting to dry it out a bit quicker. And I'm not entirely sure if you can see, but the little specks of dust are absolutely everywhere on this wheel. Prior to using the hairdryer, I'd not had one that I could see speck of dust. Now I've got them all over here. This is obviously something to do with using the hairdryer. It must just blast dust straight at the wet surface, and then of course the dust gets embedded into that surface. So now I've got the rigmarole of using the glass paper supplied, getting rid of all the nibs, the bits of dust. So although it says in the instructions that you can use a hairdryer, based on my experience, I really wouldn't recommend it. I'm now going to try and get rid of all these little nibs, but obviously that takes us back to square one, and we're going to have to reseal the whole steering wheel first coat again. Oh, happy days. as you can see, it's taking off, or hopefully you can see, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, it's taking off. It only needs a very light rub to denib, to be fair, but it's also taking off that top layer, the first coat of sealant that I've put on. So yeah, as I say, don't use air dry. You just make life worse for yourself, to be fair. Okay, that's a bit there. I'll probably edit this bit out, you know, because it's just boring and not something that I really wanted to do. So again, get rid of every little bit of dust, fix that, and then you can go back to applying your sealing coat on that. This is really good. It's really good they include this wicker kit. I think it's 1200 grit or something like that. It really is quite fine stuff, so it's absolutely perfect for the job it's supposed to do, and it's doing really well with taking the nibs off without taking too much of the stuff you want to keep. Right, so I've just mixed up some more of the finish as before, 50-50 of the matte and the gloss. I've actually used all of the sponges supplied, and having left them out overnight, they sort of dried out a bit, so I'm just using half a sort of Spontex sponge, and we're back to the first coat. So again, you've seen this before, it's just a matter of dabbing your solution all over, because you're trying to create that effect of grain, and just making sure that you get it thoroughly covered. And this time I am going to leave it to air dry. Right, so after applying the first coat of finishing top coat, I decided that it was a little bit too matte, mixing at 50-50 matte to gloss, so I upped it to about 60% of the gloss to 40% of the matte. So after the second coat, that's more like the kind of sheen level that I was hoping for. So I'm now going to go on with the third coat, and then will be the reveal. Right, so this is the finished steering wheel. There are still a couple of little nibs like just here which need taking off, but overall it's a really good improvement. It's not 100% perfect. I've got some more little nibs down there which I could take off and redo, but I'm not that bothered now. Just sort of in here, if you can see, this was the main areas of wear, and that's all covered nicely, and up around this area, and again around this side. If I can just zoom out a little bit, that was where the main areas of wear were, apart from behind the steering wheel. So overall I'd say that's a pretty good job.